Lakshmi Vilas Bank annual general body meeting, the shareholders have vetoed the appointment of 7 board members, and one of them is the managing director. The other is the promoter of the bank, K.R. Pradeep, and people associated with him. Now, is this a huge problem, or will they be able to find a stopgap solution? We have 2 former RBI deputy governors joining us, Mr. R. Gandhi, former deputy governor, and Mr. G. Padmanabhan, the former executive director of RBI. Good morning to both of you, sirs. Well, first to you, Mr. Padmanabhan, do you think this creates a huge problem, or because of the size of the bank, it's handleable?
See, I think first of all, we have to admit that this is unprecedented. I have never heard anything like this in my whole working life, that the majority of the directors get voted out, including the interim MD. But having said that, I think there is quorum still left. The board, to the best of my understanding, have met yesterday, have made alternate arrangements. But this is an issue which I think Reserve Bank should start seriously looking at, because the capital has to come in quite quickly. So how all these things are going to happen without loss of too much time is something which the regulator should be concerned about.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Gandhi as well. So morning to you. Your thoughts and, what are the immediate steps perhaps that the RBI will have to look at to at ensure day-to-day business continuity? And then how does the resolution happen of a situation like this?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Padmanabhan when he said that this is unprecedented in the history of banking. And I would think that even the corporate structure. So it is one way of shareholders making the management accountable for their performance. That way it is all right. Now, on your specific question, what the Reserve Bank should be doing around this time. It is, first of all, the LVB has given the press release which indicates that it has got sufficient liquidity. Its liquidity ratio is quite sufficient, about more than 200% of LCR. So that should give confidence to the depositors and others that it should be able to maintain its demand cash. And immediately the committee of directors have been formed to manage the affairs of the bank. So that is the normal course, even because many times, or several times, when there is a bank does not approve of the proposal for a specific MD, committee of directors have always been managing the affairs of the bank. So that way, it should be possible for this committee to take care of interim requirements of the bank. And the Reserve Bank should watch out and should actually persuade the committee to bring in additional directors of people of repute who can have gain the confidence of the shareholders and depositors. So that should be an immediate action. That communication should go to the all the stakeholders that the serious and well-intended persons are on the helm of the bank.
I got that, sir. But I just wanted to ask Mr. Padmanabhan, this is not a big problem, isn't it? I mean, it's about 21,000 crore deposits, of which I assume 28-30% would be in government securities. It has been a PCA bank, so there would be a lot of deposits which could have been already overseen. So do you think if push came to shove, it can always be given to a private sector bank?
That is correct. But the point is, it let be looked at. See, there are 2 issues. One is the depositor protection. I think historically, that's something that Reserve Bank of India has always taken care of. So I don't see a problem as far as that is concerned. But the resolution quickly. This is a bank where the issues, if I remember right, started much before even Yes Bank. And it has been continuing. So we have to quickly reach a resolution regarding this. There is no point in allowing this to continue. So to my mind, I think Reserve Bank should step in now.
Okay. Well, we'll wait and see, sirs, Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Padmanabhan. Well, since I have you all with you, a very quick question also on this court case on interest on interest. If the court were indeed to say interest on interest is a penalty, will that be a huge blow? Mr. Padmanabhan?
don't make us comment something on a matter which is sub judice.
Okay, all right. All right, Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Padmanabhan, we'll do one thing. Hopefully a verdict will be known today, and we will invite you after the verdict is so you will not have a sub judice issue. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Okay, so that's the verdict. Mr. Gandhi saying that the RBI has done what it could, but Padmanabhan saying that maybe it will have to step in if a resolution is not quickly reached.
Okay, well, on that note, let's get back to our guests. I think we also have Dipan Mehta joining in the conversation now this morning. Dipan, morning to you. Let me actually ask you, since it's the biggest underperforming part of the market, are you looking at any sort of a catch-up rally? Any bank on your buy list?
Yeah, good morning, Surbhi. And I think that banks have clearly underperformed because of what we are seeing in the economy, and more so because of complete uncertainty as regards their credit costs in a post-COVID world. And now that even the moratorium has been lifted and the settlement process is underway at individual accounts, maybe to crystallize the losses may take another quarter or two or so, and then the picture may be more clear. So I think that there's no point putting more money into banks at this point of time. I never like to buy into uncertainty, but I think there's no point selling bank investments as well, because already they've corrected the way they are, and a lot of banks are available at very attractive valuations. And maybe 6 to 12 months from now, when the credit costs have been absorbed, then you may see the leadership position coming back into banks. So I would like to remain invested in banks. And I think that maybe investors who are slightly underweight and looking at increasing, go for the safer banks like an HDFC Bank or a Kotak Bank, where at least I think the credit costs may not be as high as some of the other banks. But there's one thing which needs to be highlighted, and that is that a lot of the private sector banks have adequate pre-provisioning profits. A lot of it is coming from other income or the various services which they provide, because of which they will be able to absorb the unusually high credit costs which may emanate from this COVID-19 pandemic. And thereafter, they have adequate capital to grow the business as well. So once economy turns to normal, I think the gains made by the private sector banks will be sustained and only increase going forward. So from a medium to long-term basis, we are quite positive on the banking sector. It's just that we have to wait through this uncertainty over the next couple of quarters as regards the credit costs.
Good morning. What about Bharti Airtel? That's a stock where we've seen so much selling, in fact, 30% from its highs. Friday, we saw a bit of a rally, but what's your sense?
Yeah, well, I think that maybe the street has got Bharti Airtel wrong, at least in the short term, and there was a lot of hope and expectation that with the AGR issue out of the way, eventually consolidation has already taken place and that tariffs would move up. But instead of that, Reliance Jio has fired another salvo in the form of postpaid plans, which are as attractive or slightly better than what Vodafone and Bharti are offering. So investors got the sense that this price war within the telecom sector doesn't seem to be ending soon, which is why the sentiment has soured for Bharti Airtel and Vodafone as well. I think now it's a waiting game at this point of time. Again, we may have a long period, or maybe quarter or two, of underperformance because they'll just not be able to raise the tariffs. Also, the present COVID condition makes it difficult to increase the prices of the plans. So I think investors have to wait a little longer for the consolidation to actually play out and the competitive intensity to reduce slightly. But I think medium to long term, Bharti Airtel is a great story, as is the entire telecom industry. And I think the key lesson that at least learning for me is that if you like a particular story or a trend, then go for the market leader. I think a few months back, if you were positive on telecom, and instead of trying to ride it through Bharti Airtel and you just bought Reliance, then you were better off at this point of time. So I think that's the key learning from this particular situation which we are observing at this point of time.
Okay, well, Prakash, I wanted to ask you one final question. West Bengal has opened screens, cinema halls. So we just had Nupur telling us that Inox has a large number of screens. There were over 60 plus, she said, and about 16 screens for PVR. Any reasons to buy either of these?
So incrementally, Latha, this will probably just be testing waters for both these players, and there's also this restriction of not exceeding 50 people at a time. So, the viability and the cost of maintaining these kind of conditions, the new sanitized protocols, is fairly high. So I think that's going to continue to be a drag on both these players. In fact, I have been completely dumbfounded by the way PVR moved, right from that low that it made to all the way to 1300 plus. So this is more of a hope trade, and I don't think it's going to be so valid just because one state has opened up. And remember one thing: the propensity of people to go to these cinema halls is also going to take time. The habits will take time to come back, and then people having the disposable income to spend on this. And F&B is still a part of the income profile for most of these multiplex players. Now, how much of that translates from footfalls into revenue? All those questions are still, I think, undecided. So it's best to wait for some empirical evidence that things are normalizing. But I don't think on the back of this they become worthy of straight away buy call.
Okay, all right. Point taken on board. Prakash, thank you very much for being with us. You have a good day, and we will touch base again. We do have to take a quick break. On that note, we'll come back with more stock analysis on the other side, including, of course, the day's technical calls. So keep it with us.